Good afternoon, and welcome to our Oak Bend Medical Center Happy Hour podcast. My name is Donna, and I am your host. I am very excited this afternoon to introduce our guests today as we speak about Lamar CISD Police Department. Dallis Warren was recently selected to be the first Chief of Police for Lamar Consolidated ISD after starting the school safety program 2 years ago. Dallis brings 40 years of law enforcement, security, and emergency management experience to the school district. He is a graduate of the University of Houston downtown with a degree in criminal justice and received his master's degree in criminal justice administration from Sam Houston State University. Thank you, Chief Warren, for being here today, and we look forward to talking to you.
Great. Well, Donna, thanks for having me here today. I'm really looking forward to answering your questions and talking a little bit more about the police department that we've started here at Lamar CISD. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. I hope that our listeners get a good understanding of what's going on and how positive this can be for our community. And I understand Lamar CISD is now operating its own police department. What is the role of the police in the school?
That's a great place to start because, the main thing our job is to do are to keep kids in school and out of the criminal justice system. A lot of people have a misconception that when you put police in the schools, we're going to be there to arrest people and arrest their kids. And that's really just not the case. Our job is to promote a safe and healthy learning environment in the schools and make sure that the kids that are in school understand that and that we're there to protect them and keep them out of the criminal justice system. We want to make Lamar CISD a great place to live, work, and learn. We do a wide range of events and things while we're in the schools. In addition to keeping our, somewhere around 37,000 students and over 5,000 employees safe every day, our SROs on the campuses get to know the employees, they get to know the students, and they work with them side by side, making sure that the campuses stay safe.
That's awesome. Are officers in all of the schools, or how does that work?
We have officers assigned to every single campus. Now, if you look at our secondary campuses, those are our largest campuses that we have, and there are officers that are actually assigned and work in that same campus every single day. In addition to our police officers, we also have security officers that work in those campuses as well. And then when you get to the elementary schools, every single elementary school has an officer assigned to it, but the officer may be assigned multiple elementary schools. And so every single campus has a school resource officer, has a police officer that they can call and anytime they need any help or assistance.
Great. So that brings me to my next question. Is there a difference in a school resource officer and a police officer? And if so, what role do they both play?
And I'm going to tell you, yes, there's some differences, but no, there isn't. And let me explain that. School resource officers and police officers working for a city or working for a county or any jurisdiction all have the same authority. We all have a license issued by the state as a police officer. We have the same authority. We have the same powers to arrest people. But what we actually do in the schools is much different than what you will see police officers do on a day-to-day basis in a city or in a outside of school setting. While we have the same authority, what we do in the schools isn't to go out and arrest people. I mean, if you think about it, when you're living in a city, your local police department, your local sheriff's department, whenever something happens at your house or in your neighborhood, you want the police officers to come out, you want them to respond, you want them to investigate, you want them to be pretty aggressive in catching whoever does that. Well, we work in a much different environment. While we have 37,000 students, as I mentioned earlier, and over 5,000 employees, that's 42,000 people. But we know all 42,000 people that are on our campuses every day. You don't have that luxury in a city. You don't have that luxury out in the county. So we know who's on our campus every day. If you come visit one of our campuses, you have to check in. We do a screening procedure before you get on there. So we have a good system in place of recognizing who all's on there. So our job is to provide a secure environment. Whenever things happen, we'll investigate it. But a lot of times what happens when kids do things in school that they shouldn't do, they may break the law, but it may also be a violation of our code of conduct. And so we're going to let the administration handle that as a discipline issue, not as a criminal problem, because we understand that the impact that we can have if we have to go in and arrest a student. And that's not the type of impact that we want to have on a young person's life. We want to help them stay, like I said at the very beginning, we want to keep them in school and out of the system. And so if they break the law, it's also a violation of the discipline code. We're going to let the administration handle that so that we can keep them out of the criminal justice system. Now, if they do something that affects somebody else's safety or health, then we might have to actually go there and get them into the criminal justice system. But we have a wide range of resources that are available to us in a school district that you don't normally have in a normal police department or the sheriff's department. We've got counselors available, mental health officials that we can go to and hook them up with the services and the help they need so that they stay out of the criminal justice system. So
I gather then maybe your officers need special training to police in the schools?
Right. We have the same basic training that every police officer does, but you're also going to find that the state also says when you're working in a school district, yes, there is specific classes that we have to take. There are certain things that we're going to have to do above and beyond what a normal police officer might have to work in their job. There are some specific classes that we have to go through. Some of them have to do with dealing with active shooters, which is a very low probability, but a high risk or high impact event that when it happens in a school. So all of our officers have been trained in how to respond to active shooter events. That's just one of many things that we have to deal with.
So this is all interesting with all the talk about police officers nowadays and all this. And by the way, I want to personally thank our police officers because without them, we'd be in a lot of trouble. But it seems like this starts a foundation of relationships in a positive way with the police officers in school. Would you agree with that and want to expand on that?
Of course, and that's exactly what we expect of the officers that are assigned to those campuses. That's the reason when we assign someone to a campus, we want to keep them in that campus. We don't want to move them around a whole lot, especially on those secondary campuses. That one of the things that we want them to do is get to know the staff, get to know the students, so that if a student or a staff member is in a crisis or is having some issues or problems, if you know that individual, you're going to be able to recognize that quicker and get them the help that they need and keep them out of getting into the criminal justice system. So, yeah, we want to be a positive example on that campus. We want to work with the students. We want to work with the counselors and the staff. You'll also see on our secondary campuses, we actually have a criminal justice program through our technical education department. And so our officers are working with them to help those students learn new skills so that if they're interested in going into the law enforcement and criminal justice system for working later, they'll start acquiring those skills very early. Plus, it kind of tears down some of those barriers. They get to know the officers on a firsthand basis. They'll see them in the hallways during passing periods and get to know them, stop to them, talk to them. It's great to go into a campus and see the officers interacting with the students on a day-to-day basis. It really helps build that relationship and kind of tear down some of that negative publicity that you see that police are sometimes getting in the media.
And from a personal note, I had a granddaughter take that very class you were talking about. And in the beginning, she was always scared of police officers because she never had any kind of one-on-one with them. By the end of that, she had learned so much. Chief, what do you see as the future? I mean, we're seeing this world is so different right now, and there's so much turmoil. What do you see that you and your team will be making a difference with our schools? How will our students be safer? COVID, now we're talking about sending our kids back to school and everything else. What is a message that you want everybody to know and your goal for moving forward?
We are always looking for ways to improving security and safety in all of our campuses, and we want to do that in a way that's very welcoming and open environment. We don't want our schools to look like a prison, so to speak, that we don't want to make them overly secure where you have to go through all these systems to get into them. We want to make sure that it's an open environment. Education should be, but we also want to make sure that everybody that's on our campus, all of our students, all of our staff, all of the visitors that come into our campus are safe. And so we're always looking for ways to improve that. One of the things, in addition to having officers on the campus, we have security officers on all the campuses, on some of the elementary campuses as well. But we have a very extensive camera system throughout the school district, probably one of the best that I've seen at any school district around. Every single one of our campuses are monitored completely by our security cameras, and we're always expanding that system. Matter of fact, the last bond issue that was just passed, a very large expansion to that camera system. We're also working on the entrance to all of our older campuses. We've got some newer standards of creating a security safety vestibule to get into a campus. It's where you have to be screened before you go in. You just can't walk into one of the building and get access to students. We want to make sure that if we know exactly who's coming on to every one of our campuses. And that really wasn't something that was thought of years ago. And so some of our older campuses, we've had to kind of make some improvements to them over a period of time to try to fit where we're heading in the future. And then also in that last bond issue that I talked about, we are making some modifications, some building modifications to the front of about 9 of our older campuses so that we will have a security vestibule. And that is basically when you approach the building, staff will see you coming. They can review you. They'll see you coming into the system. They can see who you are, identify who you are, let you into the building. Then we go through a screening process to make sure that you check in through our visitor management system before you ever get access to our children. We want to make sure that registered sex offenders don't get access to any of our students. So there's a number of things that we're doing. In addition, we've created a system over the last few years. We're constantly practicing our safety drills so that in the event of emergency, our campuses are fully prepared. If you've got students on campus, you know that your campus sends out messaging at least a monthly of safety drills that we're conducting. You're going to get messages from the campus every time they conduct a safety drill. And then you're going to get a message from the school district every time we have an event on campus that we have to respond to. We want to make sure parents know what's going on the campuses so that there's no question that we're responding in the way that we need to keep their students safe. I think those are some of the recent changes we have, and we're always looking for ways to improve that. But I think communication is a key. We work very closely with our community relations department and make sure that anytime there's something on campus that we have to respond to, the parents and the staff and the students are aware of it and understand what we're doing and how we're responding so that nobody is, one, that keeps the rumors down, and it makes sure that everybody reassures all the parents that their students that we're keeping them safe.
Well, you basically answered my question. My next one was, I was reading an article about Fort Bend County, and as much as I hate to admit it, and I guess a lot of people do, we do have sex offenders. We do have trafficking and abductions happening all over Fort Bend County. And I had read the article that a school was targeted at one time. I don't think it was Lamar, but, so you answered the question. You really are keeping our children safe. And I imagine this gives a great opportunity, too, with your relationships with the staff and with the students to recognize child abuse or any other thing going on in the family or with the child?
Right. We work closely with the counselors and staff and very closely with also the Children's Advocacy Center. Let's back up just a little bit. We were talking about the protecting against sexual predators and registered sex offenders. Anytime you come onto our campus, we have a system that when we check you into the campus, it automatically checks every single sex offender database in the United States. So it's not just Texas. We're checking throughout all 50 states in the United States. And so we want to make sure, even if somebody's from out of state and they're a registered sex offender, if they come, if they're a visitor, if they're a vendor or worker that's coming onto the campus, they are all going to get screened and checked to make sure that those types of predators stay off of our campus. And then what was the rest of your question? I'm sorry.
With the child abuse, recognizing child abuse and those kind of things. I know the hospital's been spending a lot of time looking for ways to learn about that. This is a great way to find it too.
That's one of the things that I've always kind of preached, that if we build those relationships with the student, not only our staff, but our police officers, our security officers, we're going to recognize whenever something happens to them, whenever they're abused or whenever there's a change in their behavior. We're going to recognize that pretty quick if you know those individuals, but you've got to build those relationships to start with so that you see that change. And when that change occurs, you can then intervene and kind of find out what's going on, what issues is that student going through, what kind of problems are they having. And then we've got a great staff of counselors. We've got a great staff of resources that are available to us for mental health, for physical abuse, sexual abuse. We actually use our Children's Advocacy Center here, has trained forensic investigators and interviewers that they actually come in and do the interview of all students. We don't even interview the students whenever we suspect something like that. We have trained professionals that come in, will interview the students, interview any minor to find out if they've been a witness of a crime or a victim of a crime, collect that evidence so that we can present it to the district attorney's office and help get that student the services and the safety that they need.
Chief Warren, I have heard that you are extremely passionate about law enforcement and what you do, but I've also heard that you're very passionate about this community and Lamar CISD, because I understand you had some daughters graduate with Lamar CISD just recently. And I also understand that you come from several generations in this community who were advocates of education and supporting children in their growth. Is that not a true statement?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you go back, there's actually an elementary school that was named after a great-grandfather who came here from Germany, Austria, years ago. Meyer Elementary is J. Meyer Road and Highway 36. John Christian Meyer came here at a very young age, and we're fortunate to have a school named after him. I'm fortunate to work in the same district that has a school named after a family member.
And I kind of wanted to point that out because this isn't just a job or a paycheck for you. This is a passion. And you've had family go through it and you put your all into it. And we as a community want to thank you and your team for putting this together for our students. For me, I have grandchildren in the Lamar School District, and I feel so much more comfortable knowing that we have a law enforcement that is all in. So I want to thank you, and thank you for joining us today. And a big thank you to all our listeners for tuning in. Beginning now, set an intention and a relentless focus on living your life as the greatest person you can be in all situations. Please join us next week.
Thank you for joining us today on Oak Bend Medical Center Happy Hour podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's broadcast and invite you to email us at oakbendhappyhourpodcast@obmc.org with any questions or topics that you would like for us to cover. Remember, you can find us here each Friday at 5. Until next week, be mindful and stay healthy.